Hey guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be taking a little bit more of a relaxed approach to this video because I really want to sit down today with a cup of my peppermint tea and talk to you guys about some of the things that I've learned as a creative freelancer over the last 5 years or so of doing this professionally. So I went full-time working as a creative freelancer in 2018 after many years of being a struggling freelancer, doing this as a side hustle, I guess you'd call it, and being a photographer as a side hustle. And I did this for a number of years, going kind of in and out of jobs on the side. And there was kind of never a time where I was able to do it easily in a full-time fashion, earning a full-time income. So I really wanted to talk about today just some of the things that I've learned along the way. I mean, now 5 years kind of feels like quite a long time that I've been doing this now full-time. I think it feels even longer when you're working in your own business and you're having to do things for yourself all the time. There's just so many aspects to running your own business, and particularly as a creative as well. So grab a cup of coffee or tea or hot chocolate or whatever you drink. And today we're going to talk about some of the things that I've learned of being a creative freelancer, and hopefully this video will help you guys on your journey to being one as well. So I think as a disclaimer, before we even start this video, before I even start these points, I think it's really important to realize that no job that you ever do in this lifetime is going to be perfect. There are always going to be aspects about it that you don't like. There are going to be aspects about it that you wish you didn't have to do. I think that comes along with most jobs. I mean, there might be the odd random one out there that is an amazing job that has no downfalls. I mean, I'd love to know about that job if there's one that exists. But I will say that as a creative freelancer, as a photographer who has been running their own business for the last 5 years, there have been a lot of things about it that I haven't enjoyed that much. And I'm actually going to go through some of these points in this video today because I think that sometimes these kinds of things are glamorized. These kinds of jobs are glamorized. And I really want to talk about some of those things that I didn't realize going into it that I actually found out that I really didn't like so much in the end. So without further rambling, I'm going to get stuck into the points now and go through some things that I learned over the years. Okay, so the first thing that I learned as a creative freelancer and as someone especially who was working from home and working for themselves is that boundaries are important. And of course, it sounds like a pretty standard thing that you would think that you'd know going into a role like this, but I think very easily this kind of thing gets lost along the way, and I'm going to talk about a couple of reasons why this is. So if you're anything like me, especially in the beginning of starting my business or doing it full time, I did a lot of late night work. So I really had no time boundaries in terms of when I would be working during the day. I would start very early in the morning and then just kind of keep going until 11 p.m. at night at times, which isn't really that healthy, I came to realize. And especially when you're sending emails at 2 a.m. in the morning and bending over backwards for clients on certain tasks that usually, in this day and age, I would just not do anymore. But I found myself getting into a cycle of doing this and really not having those boundaries with clients or even with my own work-life balance. I also found that I wasn't having much work separation in terms of my own home. I was doing a lot of work from home and I still do, but I really didn't have that office set up. I didn't sort of make too much of an effort initially to have an office set up or a quiet space where I could kind of focus on work and then kind of leave it at the end of the day. I think too, having your workspace, if it's very close to your bedroom or in your bedroom, this becomes a real issue after a while of doing the work in there because you're on your desk and you just kind of stay there until you go to bed. And it's kind of like this really toxic cycle of kind of not having those boundaries. So it's something that I've learned over the years that is really important. If you want to work for yourself, if you want to have your own business, make sure you set those boundaries and do it earlier rather than later, because the earlier that you do set them, the more of a routine you're going to get into more quickly and easier than if you kind of start, a few years into your business and trying to get out of bad habits that way. Try and have those good habits from the beginning of having those set boundaries. And the second thing that I've learned about being a creative freelancer over the last 5 years is that you may like doing client work a lot less than you think. I hope that made sense. So what I'm trying to say here is that if you are working for clients primarily for your business, for your online business, or whether it's in person or whether you're working from home, whatever kind of creative business that you have, working for clients can be a lot less enjoyable than what you may initially think. Sometimes this can be especially glamorized in terms of my industry where I'm working as a beauty photographer or a photographer in general and working for brands, big brands and, clients and things like that. And that can really, really be glamorized. But I do feel at the end of the day, there are certain aspects to it that I found out that I didn't really like that much. And I always kind of built this up in terms of my dream job, in terms of working for clients. That was the pinnacle. That was always going to be the pinnacle of my business and what I really wanted to achieve. But it's funny, the more that I tended to do along with that, the more things that came along with that I really didn't enjoy as much. For example, as a creative in this situation, you're really working for other clients. These are not always your ideas that you're going to be producing. Quite often it is the client that has something that they want to come to you with, and then you're basically creating what they want. And of course, that's how the world works. That's how this particular industry works. But in terms of my own creativity and doing this so often, day after day or week after week, and making that the primary focus of my business, it's something I found out that I didn't really like that much, because it's not essentially why I got into photography in the first place. When I really think back to it, I mean, the first reasons that I got into photography was that there was so much creativity, so many avenues you could go into, so many different ways to produce images, and it wasn't just for the money or the income or, the running a business aspect of it. That kind of all came along with it, and clients especially comes along with that. But there's a lot of pressures and stresses that are involved in that kind of work. And sometimes you just need to realize that maybe that may not be the most glamorous aspect of your business. And depending on what you do as a creative, there are other ways to build up your creative business, maybe where you don't necessarily have to be serving clients all the time or as a primary focus. And maybe that's something that as a creative you could consider if you're looking at going into working for yourself. Think about those other things and think outside of the box in terms of how you can be bringing in an income. Clients are not always the answer, and especially if you're like me and have found to be working for a lot of clients over the years and finding that it can really kind of sap you of that creative energy. That creativity that you have can become strained in this situation, and sometimes as a creative you are not always valued by your client. And I think that really eats into the fact that there's been times where I have not enjoyed working for clients. Of course, I've had my amazing clients. I've had amazing jobs. I've had amazing clients in the past. But in terms of working like that day in, day out, I started to find that that was maybe not something that I wanted to do all the time. So there were other avenues in my business that I decided to take as well, so I could kind of have more of a mix and more of that variety that I think I craved. Number 3 is to always have an emergency fund. Now, this is more of a business-based aspect of this. It's not just for being a creative. I think having an emergency fund in any situation is a great idea, but especially when you are a freelancer and the nature of creative work can be like this. It comes in waves. There may be some months where, especially in the beginning of your business, you may not earn anything. You may not earn anything in a single given month. And in that instance, it's really important to be kind of squirreling money away into an emergency fund to make sure that you can cover yourself for those months that you're not getting any jobs or you're not getting paid, especially initially. I think this is something that really got me through those first few hiccups of working for myself and getting that consistent work that I didn't have initially, but it sort of bought me time in having an emergency fund to do that and to keep working on my business in the meantime and manifesting as much as I could. So having an emergency fund, definitely key to being a creative freelancer, and it's going to take a lot more stress off your mind if you know you've got that emergency money there on the months that you're not maybe making as much money or completing as many jobs. And along with this, number 4 is actually that it helps to have different income streams as a creative freelancer. And I've sort of briefly touched on this in terms of when I was talking about client work and the fact that I have moved into other avenues as well. This is a really good way to go. If you don't want to particularly rest on one certain avenue of income, I think it's a great way to start spreading your revenue across different income streams. So for me, this looks like lots of different things. As a photographer, I do retouching. I do photography, obviously, for clients. I do education material online. I do courses. I also have ad revenue and things like that from YouTube and Google AdSense, from blogs. There's just quite a lot of avenues that I've decided to take over the years. And one of those reasons is because a lot of those avenues I actually enjoyed, even more so than necessarily always working for clients, but it has also helped me to have different income streams. So I do not have to rely on certain ones. Like, for example, as a beauty photographer, if I just relied on beauty photography work month to month, it can be a struggle to do that at times, especially when you're living in a town that's not very close to a city, or you're not really in a city all the time working. I think it's really important to create other ways of having that consistency in your freelance business. And there's lots of different ways to do it. And I'll probably talk a little bit more about it on this channel. I think I already have touched on the topic a few times in different videos, but it's definitely something to look into. The next thing I've learned while being a creative freelancer is that you don't need to work 9 to 5. I don't know why I did this for so long where I sort of stuck to the 9 to 5 routine when I got into freelancing full time. It's like I couldn't get out of it. I was already stuck in it from working 9 to 5 jobs, and then I kind of just carried it over to my freelance role. But I really got stuck in this formation and this cycle of working 9 to 5 again, just Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and even the occasional Saturday as well. Working 9 to 5 is a construct for many jobs, and it's something that's been around probably only for the last 100 years or so. And it's something that hasn't really been updated. And I've talked about this a little bit before on my channel as well, but it's really important to know that if you can do certain tasks in a quicker amount of time, if you feel that you can get a lot more done in, say, a 4-hour period versus an 8-hour period, then utilize those hours and use them to your advantage and do that, because having that flexibility as a freelancer should be used to your advantage. And don't just kind of like feel like you need to fall back into the 9 to 5 routine. I have done this many times, and quite often afterwards I've been scratching my head thinking, why did I do this? Because the whole reason I wanted to work for myself, the whole reason I wanted to be a freelancer, was to have that flexibility around my work schedule and know that I didn't have to work 9 to 5 on certain days. So really keep that in mind. If you are starting off as a freelancer, you don't have to necessarily work 9 to 5. Work in the hours that is best for you. And if you haven't seen one of my most recent videos where I talk about sleep cycles and in terms of your productivity, the best hours that work for you, your golden hours of productivity, definitely check that video out, because I really do go into depth there with certain books that I've read and how this can kind of really help you find those best productive hours in your day. Number 6 is that it's okay to evolve. It's okay. It's okay to do different things. It's okay to go down different avenues with your business and as a creative. And this is something that took me a really long time to realize. I was always under the impression that you should really just stick with a certain niche, find your niche and really capitalize on it and just continue to run with it forever and ever and ever and ever. But I think as a creative, this can be a really stifling mentality. I think that as you grow, you naturally want to do different things and naturally want to evolve in your workload. And I think that's completely fine, and probably something that I would encourage actually, because it stops you from being completely bored with what you're doing. And as creatives, I think we always need that stimulation in terms of the work that we're doing. We always need that extra spark that kind of keeps us going. And when you're evolving with your business and you're doing different things, that helps to do that. So don't be worried if you think that there's too many things that you want to do. There's usually so much time for us to really space out what we want to do, and there's always opportunities to do new things, especially as you grow with your own business. So don't be afraid of that. Number 7 is to allow time for your creativity. Oh my God, please do this. As a creative, as one creative to another, please allow time for yourself to be creative. Because one thing that I found when I got into my own freelance business is that I kind of like stifled my own creativity quite a lot from the beginning. I didn't allow myself to have days where I would just experiment with things, or just, play around with different color grades in Photoshop, or, even go and take photos just for the fun of it. I wouldn't do that. I would be so focused on my business and being in this kind of like cycle of telling myself that, well, my business was my hobby, my work is my hobby. So I am doing hobbies every day. I am being creative. I am doing those things. But really, in reality, I wasn't. I was doing the work for my clients. I was really focusing too hard, I think, on always kind of bettering myself and getting better, and which is fine. And that's one thing that naturally does come along with having your own business and being a creative. But I think there's really needing to be that time for yourself to really explore creativity and be creative. And one term that I've actually come across when I've been talking to my brother, who is also a creative, is sandboxing, and having kind of a sandbox mentality where you take this time to just kind of play around with your creativity. Just do things, do new things. If it's relating to your business, that's great. If it's not relating to your craft, that's also great. But any way that you can kind of find a way to be inspired and to experiment with different creative options, I think that that's such a good thing that you need to implement into your time as a creative business owner. Number 8 is that collaboration can be a very good thing. Collaboration is something that, of course, came along with my career. As a beauty photographer, I always have to work with a lot of creative teams and lots of different people. But I think sometimes it's something that I undervalued, and I think definitely more that I've been working more at home and focusing less on working with clients over the last few years, there's definitely been an element of loneliness that tends to pop up as a creative freelancer, or even someone running their own business at home. I think that this becomes something that you really need to address at times, and it's something that for a lot of us, especially introverts, and I would probably consider myself more introverted than not. I think sometimes as introverts, we kind of tell ourselves, oh, we don't need people, we don't need to collaborate, we don't need that. It's just better off if we're in our own little boxes, our own little homes, our comfy spaces. And yeah, that's really nice and all. But I think at the end of the day, there tends to be this social element that you can sometimes miss out on. And it's really heartbreaking at times because it's something that a lot of people are not used to as well when they go from working in a 9-to-5 environment, maybe in an office job, and then they go to working for themselves. It can be a really big shift. And I think a lot of people found that a couple of years ago in particular. And it's sometimes something that we don't always think that we need, but that social contact and that collaboration aspect from your work is something that can be really incredibly important. And it's something that I think shouldn't always be dismissed as well. Number 9 is one of my favorite points. And of course, if you know me, I have so many different planners and I own different planners to work with on a daily basis in my business. But planning is key. It really is. And that term, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. I think that there is nothing truer than that statement at times, especially when it comes to working in your own business. And for someone who didn't really like planning that much going back a number of years ago, I've definitely changed my perspective around this. And of course, spontaneity is great in your business and as a creative, but there definitely needs to be that planning aspect, especially if you know yourself that you're not on top of things naturally with certain elements of a business, especially finances and things like that. Planning is something that you really need to start doing, and it's something I've learned is incredibly important. And number 10, I think, is one of the most important points that I'm going to talk about today, and it's the fact that there is no end point. It's something that I've gradually come to realize, especially in the last few years. There's no end point to your business. There's no point where you're going to be like, okay, yep, I'm successful, I'm happy, I'm doing everything that I want to be doing now, and I'm good. I think that that point is just kind of a bit of a myth. I don't think that it actually exists. And I think it's kind of cliche when obviously people talk about, it's about the journey. It's not about the end point. And I think there's something though that's very, very true about that. I think that there is so much in the journey of things, and you're probably never ever going to get to that point where you're just suddenly satisfied with whatever you're doing in your business or as a creative. There's always going to be things that you want to do more of or want to do less of, and the grass is always going to be greener on the other side. So I think that there's something in that really people need to realize is that this job is not always as glamorous as it seems. It's not always as flexible and freedom-filled as it seems. And I think that that's something that's not always often achieved by a lot of creative freelancers, even though they go into this kind of a role thinking that that will be their goal. It isn't something that's always achieved. And unless you kind of put those markers in place, and some of those things that I've talked about today, those boundaries and things like that, to make sure that you are giving yourself and providing yourself that freedom and flexibility, which is something that I think a lot of people struggle to do. So there's nothing particularly glamorous, I think, about being a creative freelancer. I think there's something really special about being a creative and being able to do some of the things that you do for work or offer your skills up to the world, or however you decide to share your creative business with other people. I think that that's really special and wonderful and very fulfilling for a lot of people. But there's definitely aspects to it that I think we all need to realize are just as frustrating, if not more frustrating, than sometimes even working in a 9-to-5 regular job, no matter what that may be. But in terms of changing it, I wouldn't change it for the world. I think that I've come a long way from where I initially was. And I think that learning some of these things have really been nothing but helpful to me now. So I'm glad that I have learned these things, and now that I can share them on this YouTube channel with you all if you are thinking about being a creative freelancer yourself. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video today. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned a few things from it. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel already, make sure that you do. I'll be posting a lot more creative content and freelance content on here in future. Let me know if there's anything in particular you want to see in the comments section below. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.